The forest was quiet and still, and the air felt heavy as if holding its breath. The little alien girl named Sari moved slowly between the trees, her small glowing eyes scanning the soft earth below for signs of him. She was not supposed to be here. The elders had warned her again and again, stay away from the sacred pool, stay away from the human, but her heart was full of questions, and her feet refused to turn. Back Sari was tiny, even among her kind. Her silver blue skin shimmered softly in the moonlight, and her long ears twitched with every sound she had heard. The story since childhood of a strange creature once came from the stars, who never spoke much but always watched from a distance, who lived near the sacred pool where no alien dared go anymore. Some said he was dangerous, others said he was kind, but no one knew for sure, except Sario remembered something no one else did years ago when she was only a baby. She had wandered too far into the forest and almost fell into the river. A shadow had lifted her away gently. Strong arms had wrapped around her and then vanished before anyone else came. She never saw who saved her, but she never forgot the warmth in that moment and the scent of something not from this world. And when she heard the word human for the first time, she knew deep inside that it was him tonight. She followed the footprints again, fresh and large, pressed into the damp moss, leading toward the pool. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from something else, something strange and exciting. The wind whispered through the tall trees, and the leaves danced above her, but she could not hear them. All she heard was her breath. All she felt was the pull guiding her closer and closer. The sacred pool was not like the other water on this planet. It glowed faintly with a blue light, and steam rose from it. Even though the night was cold, legends said it was a gift from the sky, and that its waters could show your truth. But Sari had never seen it, not with her own eyes, not until now. She stopped at the edge, hiding behind a thick root, and there he was. A tall figure sat beside the pool, not moving, not making a sound. His skin was pale and strange, and his hair dark and messy. His clothes were old but clean, and his boots were muddy from the trail. He looked tired but peaceful. His eyes stared into the water, but then slowly they turned toward her, and she froze for a long moment. They did not move, just stared at each other, her tiny body hidden behind the root, his tall form sitting in silence, no weapon in his hand, no threat in his face. Only something deep in his eyes that felt almost like he knew her, like he had seen her before. And then he said her name, Sari. His voice was soft, like wind through the leaves, and it made her chest tighten. How do you know my name? She wanted to ask, but her mouth would not open. She just stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe. He reached into his coat and pulled something out, a small object made of wood. He placed it on the ground in front of him, and then stood slowly, not rushing, not coming closer, just rising like the moon, and then turning away. He walked into the trees, leaving the object behind, as if he knew she would take it, as if he knew she would come when she was sure he was gone. She stepped out from hiding and walked to the object. It was a carving, rough and small, shaped like her tiny ears, her small eyes, even the little necklace she always wore around her neck. How could he know every detail? Her hands shook as she picked it up and held it close. Something inside her cracked open memories, maybe dreams, maybe something real. She looked toward the trees where he had vanished, and her mind screamed with questions. Who was he? Why did he carve her? Why did he wait here? Was he the one who saved her all those years ago? And if so, why had he stayed hidden? Why now? Why tonight? The pool shimmered behind her, and the wind picked up, sending ripples across the water. She turned and ran back into the forest, heart racing, mind spinning. But she did not drop the carving. She held it tight against her chest, and with every step, the questions grew louder. Somewhere far behind her, the human watched from a higher branch. Silent again, a faint smile on his face. He had waited a long time for this moment, and he knew she would come back. Because there were answers she needed, and he was the only one who had them. Sari sat on the edge of her small bed, staring at the wooden Carving the moonlight coming through the leafy roof made it glow softly in her hands. Her fingers moved over the shape of her tiny ears, carved perfectly. The eyes matched hers. The necklace was the same as the one around her neck. Her mind refused to rest. The human had spoken her name. He had looked at her like he knew everything, and then he left without a word. Except her name, the village outside was sleeping. Only the forest made sounds, now the soft chirps of night creatures, the rustling of leaves, the crackle of old wood in the fire pit. But inside her heart, everything was loud. Every memory of the pool, every step through the forest, every second of their silent stare, all of it played again and again in her mind, and she could not stop it. No matter how tight she closed her eyes, she remembered stories told by her grandmother. Stories of a time before the pool was sacred, when the humans had first come to the planet. Some stayed peaceful, some tried to hurt the land, and the aliens pushed them back. Only a few humans remained after that, and one of them was said to live near the pool for many seasons. No one had seen him, but old tales whispered about him, about a guardian, about a watcher who kept to the shadows and never spoke. Sorry stood up quietly and walked outside, holding the carving close. She walked past the empty garden, past the glowing stones that marked her ancestors, past the tall trees that swayed like they were alive. The forest called her again, but this time it was different. She did not feel scared or curious. She felt pulled, like something invisible was waiting for her, like the answers were just a little farther than last time. She took a new path, not the same as before. This time, she followed the wind. She followed the air. She followed the strange sense that told her where to go, deeper into the forest. She walked with quiet steps, her ears catching every little sound, every snap of a twig, every flutter of a leaf. Her heart beat fast, but it was not fear this time. It was hope. After what felt like hours, she reached the sacred pool again, but the place looked different. The water was still glowing, but the ground around it was torn. Branches, broken marks of struggle, signs of something violent. A fight, maybe, or maybe something worse. She stepped closer and saw footprints, but not just his. There were others, bigger, heavier, pressed deep into the mud, as if someone had been dragged or forced through this path. Then she saw the carving again, but it was broken, split in half. One side buried in dirt, the other half lying near the pool. She picked it up and stared at the crack through her wooden eyes and her wooden smile, and it felt like something inside her cracked too. She turned the piece over and noticed something carved into the back. Not a drawing, not a word. It was a map. Her hand shook as she traced the lines that led away from the pool into another part of the forest. One she had never entered before. A place even the elders avoided, a place with black trees and no light. But if the human was taken, if he was in danger, then she could not stay. She had to go. She had to know why he carved her, why he waited, and why he looked at her like she meant something. She wrapped the two halves of the carving in a cloth and tied it to her waist. Then she followed the path on the map, every step filled with shadows, every sound louder, every breath deeper. The forest changed around her. Trees grew thicker, vines hung low, the light above faded until it felt like night, even though the sky was waking. After some time, she found something strange. A piece of cloth caught on a branch. It was not hers, and it was not from her village. It smelled different, sharp, cold, like metal and wind. She held it to her nose and felt something stir inside her. A memory, maybe not hers, maybe his, maybe shared by touch. She saw fire. She saw pain. She saw eyes watching from behind glass, and she dropped the cloth in fear, but she could not turn back. Not now. She moved ahead until the trees opened into a clearing, and in the middle stood a tall structure, not of wood, not of stone, but of old human metal, rusted and silent, like a skeleton of a time lost and forgotten. She stepped toward it, slowly feeling the pull again, stronger now, louder now, like the forest itself wanted her to enter. She placed her hand on the cold surface, and it opened, not with sound, not with force. Just a shift in air, a door sliding into shadow, and inside, she Saw dim lights flickering and something moving at the far end, not fast, not loud. Just a shape breathing slowly chained to the wall, covered in bruises and dust. Was him of the human, he looked up as if he already knew she was there and when there. Eyes met again, he smiled the same way he had at the pool, and whispered again sorry. The moment their eyes met again, something inside her heart shifted like a forgotten melody returning after years. The cold metal walls around them faded into silence, and only the slow breaths between them remained. The human sat still, his arms bound with rough straps, his clothes torn, his face marked with old wounds, but his eyes held the same calm, the same warmth, the same memory that haunted her. Dreams. Sari stepped closer, her small hands trembling, her voice trapped behind her lips. She had no words, only questions too many for one night, but she knew she had to say something, anything, but when she opened her mouth, only one word escaped. Why? And he smiled again, soft and gentle, as if her question made sense without needing more. His voice was weaker now, but it still carried the same weight, the same peace. He whispered, because I promised I would protect you. Her knees weakened, and she sat on the dusty floor beside him. The smell of rust and sorrow filled the room, but his presence made it feel safe, like the trees around the sacred pool, like the warmth of old stories told by firelight. She looked at the broken metal around his arms and tried to undo the straps, but they were tight, and her strength was too little. Her hands moved fast, her breath faster, but the straps would not move. He shook his head slowly and said, "You should not be here. They will come back, they never leave for long. You must go and hide." But she shook her head harder than ever before. "I will not leave you, not again, not this time, and not ever." And in that moment, her eyes burned, not with fear, not with anger, but with something powerful, something glowing deep inside her. The room around them flickered, the lights above shook, dust fell from the ceiling, and her fingers glowed faint blue like the sacred pool. The human noticed but said nothing. He just watched, as if he had seen it before, as if he had waited for this moment longer than she could imagine. Her hands touched the straps again, and this time they loosened with a strange sound like soft thunder in water, and the metal let go. His arms dropped to his sides, weak and numb, and she helped him sit up straight. She asked, "How long have they kept you here?" And he said, "Since the day I chose to stay, since the day I refused to leave your planet, since the day I told them I had something worth staying for." Her breath caught again, and she looked away, not sure what to say, not sure what it meant. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a piece of string with a crystal on it. It shimmered like the light from the sacred pool, and he placed it in her hand, saying, "This belongs to you. It always did. I just kept it safe until you were ready." Her fingers closed around it, and she felt a wave of warmth rush through her, like rain in dry soil, like sunlight in frozen woods. A loud sound echoed from above, heavy boots on metal, sharp voices yelling in a language she could not understand. He stood, slowly, still, weak, but ready, and she stood with him, holding his arm. They looked at each other, and without a word began to move through the shadows. She led the way, using the map still burned in her mind from the broken carving. Every turn, every step, every door matched the lines she had traced in her dreams. They moved through narrow halls, past broken lights and old machines, past locked doors and broken glass, past memories that belonged to no one and yet felt like hers. The voices behind them grew louder, but she did not stop, and neither did he. Together they reached the edge of the building and found the night waiting, the forest open wide, like arms ready to welcome them home. But just before they stepped into the trees, a figure blocked the path, tall and dark, with glowing eyes and a weapon in hand. It was not human and not alien, something in between, a creation of both, and it spoke in a voice that made her knees shake. Why? The forest was darker now than ever before. The trees stood tall, like silent giants, watching every step, every breath, every heartbeat. Sari held the human's hand tightly. Her glow had faded, but a strange warmth still lived in her chest, the memory of the light, the force that saved them, the power that came without warning. It made her feel different, like something ancient had touched her and left a part of itself inside her veins. Walked beside her, slow and careful, his steps uneven. But steady, he did not speak much, only when needed, only when the silence grew. Too loud and heavy, the forest welcomed them back with quiet sounds, with soft winds, with whispers through the leaves. But Sari knew they were not safe. Not yet, maybe not ever, because something had changed the moment her hands glowed, the moment she stood between life and death, the moment she chose to fight instead of run. Nay, moved through the old path, the one she had never taken before. The one the map had not shown. But her feet seemed to remember it somehow, like her body knew the way. Even when her mind did not, the ground was soft and covered in silver moss. The air filled with floating dust that sparkled in moonlight, and above them, strange lights danced between the branches like stars, pretending to be fireflies. Ben stopped suddenly, his eyes scanning the sky, his voice low and calm. "They will send more," he said. "They never stop. They see us now, they will follow, but we cannot stop here." And she nodded, her heart steady, her grip stronger than before. They kept walking deeper into the forest until they reached a place she had only heard of in stories, a place older than the sacred pool, a place of beginnings. It was a clearing surrounded by stone pillars, each one taller than the trees, and carved with symbols that shimmered faintly in the dark. In the center, a small pool of still water, no glow, no steam, no sound, just silence, pure and deep and real. Sari stepped forward, feeling something stir in her again, something quiet but strong, like a voice too old for words. She turned to Evan, her eyes wide, her voice soft. "What is this place?" And he looked around slowly, as if seeing a memory he thought was lost. "This is where it started," he said. "This is where the first human ship landed, long before your people knew we came. Long before the wars, before the fear, before the stories. This is where I was born. Not from a mother, not like you, but born from metal and code. Raised by machines, left behind by people who never came back, and I stayed because I saw beauty here, because I saw you." Sari felt the weight of his words like rain on dry ground, like light through closed eyes. She stepped to the pool and looked into it, expecting to see her face, but what she saw was something else. A flash of stars, a world on fire, a hand reaching out, a promise made long ago and broken many times. She blinked, and the image was gone, but the feeling remained deep and real and unshakable. She turned back to Evan, who had fallen to one knee, his breath shallow, his face pale. The journey had taken too much from him, and now his strength was fading fast. She rushed to him, her hands glowing again. Without effort, without thought, she placed them on his chest and closed her eyes, feeling the energy move from her to him, not draining her, but connecting them like two rivers meeting at last. His breathing slowed, then steadied. His color returned, his eyes opened with surprise and wonder, and he whispered, "I think I was waiting for you, not just at the pool, not just in the forest, but my whole life." And she smiled through tears, not from sadness, but from something brighter, something stronger than fear, stronger than pain. She helped him stand, and together they faced the path ahead, not knowing where it led, but ready to walk it side by side. Suddenly the ground trembled, not from footsteps, not from machines, but from something deeper. The pillars began to hum, the air thickened, the sky above opened with a crack of light, and from it descended a shape, not human, not alien, something in between, a being made of light and shadow, with eyes that held galaxies, and a voice that echoed in their minds. "You have awakened the old path," it said. "You have broken the silence, you have touched the truth, and now you must decide what world will rise from your steps, what story will be told from your choice, what future will be born from your bond." And then it faded, leaving behind only silence. Again, only stars. Again, only breath and heartbeat. And when Sari looked at Evan, and he looked back, No fear, no doubt, only trust, only wonder, only the quiet knowing that something had changed forever. They held hands and walked toward the unknown. Not because they had to, but because they chose to, because sometimes the smallest step can echo across the stars, and sometimes the tiniest alien girl can carry the fire of 1,000 suns in her handsu. Should not have returned, little one, the human must stay and you must forget. But she stepped forward, her hand still glowing, her voice clear and strong. No, I remember everything now, and I will not forget. The figure raised the weapon, but the human moved in front of her, his arms wide. His body still weak, but standing like a shield. He said, "You will not touch her, not while I breathe." And the figure paused as if unsure, then it attacked fast and silent and deadly, but before it could reach them, Sari raised her hand, and light exploded from her palm, like the heart of the sacred pool itself. The figure flew backward, crashing into the trees, vanishing into the dark, and everything went still. The human turned to her, eyes wide with awe, and asked how, and she said, "I do not know, but I feel like this was always inside me, and now it is awake." He nodded, and together they stepped into the forest. The moonlight dancing around them, the path ahead open and full of answers. The stars above seemed brighter now than ever before, each one watching from the sky, like ancient eyes holding secrets too vast for any heart to carry. Sari walked with steady steps, her fingers locked with Evan's, the warmth between them not just from touch, but from something deeper, something that words could not shape, and yet it lived strong in every breath. They shared. The forest around them had grown quiet, not silent like fear, but quiet like peace, the kind that follows a storm. They crossed rivers shallow and cold, their feet slipping on smooth stones, their laughter soft and quick like sparks. Dancing on water, they climbed hills covered in glowing moss, their hands reaching for roots and branches, their eyes catching glimpses of strange birds hiding in trees and strange flowers whispering secrets only the wind could hear. But through it all, they never stopped moving, for they knew the peace was not real, not yet, only borrowed from a world still watching from the dark after hours of walking. They reached a ridge where the sky opened wide, and far below the land stretched like a dream. Rolling fields, dark mountains, sleeping lakes, and in the far distance, a light pulsing steady like a heart calling them home. Evan pointed toward it, his voice low and sure. "That is where we must go. That is the source of the signal. That is where the others wait. The ones who built me, the ones who want to end what we began." Sari felt the pull again, not from fear, but from purpose, like her feet were meant for this path, like her glow was meant for this moment, like the pool, the carvings, the light, the vision, the silence, the power, all of it had led to this ridge, to this light, to this choice. She nodded once, her hand tightening around his, and they began to climb down the rocks, sharp and loose, the wind loud and wild, but their steps never faltered. They moved through the valley, strange machines stirred beneath, the soil large and slow, with metal limbs and blinking lights. They did not attack, they only watched like statues with beating hearts. Sari could feel their minds, not with words, but with feelings, with echoes of memories, not hers, not Evan's, but belonging to something old. Something mechanical, yet full of sorrow. She touched one gently, and it shivered. A memory passed through her like a whisper through fog. A battlefield full of stars, a planet torn by fire, a child crying in smoke, a promise broken, a hand reaching up, and then silence. The machine shut down, its light fading, and the others turned away, sinking back into the earth, leaving a clear path forward. Sari turned to Evan, her voice soft. "What did they show me?" And he answered, not with fear, but with pain. "They showed you the price of our silence. They reached the base of the mountain where the light pulsed stronger now, each beat sending waves through the air, each wave pulling at her chest like a song, like a name, like a memory she never lived." Evan stopped, his eyes wide, his breath held. He looked at her, not as the human who had waited, but as someone standing before destiny. His voice cracked as he said once, "We enter, nothing will be the same. Are you ready?" And she answered, "I was born ready, even if I did not know it." The door opened without touch. A circle of white that spread into shadow, and they stepped through together. Inside, the air was thick with energy. The walls curved and glowing. The sound of 1,000 thoughts moving at once filled their ears, but did not hurt. Instead, it felt like music, like rain on dry leaves, like stories written in wind. At the center of the chamber stood a tall figure, its body made of light, its face shifting between stars and faces. "You have returned," it said, not with anger, not with joy, only truth, and behind it more figures stepped out, each one different yet the same, each one watching yet feeling, each one ancient yet reborn. Evan stood tall, his hand letting go of Sari's as he stepped forward and said, "I kept my promise. I found her, I protected her. And now she stands here not as a child, but as the Keitha figures turned their eyes to Sari, and she felt the weight of every choice, every step, every fear, and every flame that had lived inside her since the first time she touched the sacred pool. Her voice did not shake, her glow did not dim. She looked at them and said, "I am not your weapon, I am not your tool, I am not your code or your command. I am my own light, and I choose my own path." The chamber trembled not in rage, but in recognition. The light above them burst into colors never seen. The figures lowered their heads not in defeat, but in respect. And the door behind them closed with a whisper, sealing the past behind and opening the future ahead. Evan walked back to her, his eyes full of wonder and pride, and she smiled, not because it was over, but because it had just begun together. They stepped forward into the next chamber, where answers waited, where history breathed, where stars whispered promises that no machine could break. And as they walked, Sari felt her glow rise again, not from fear, not from pain, but from hope, the kind that moves mountains, the kind that rewrites destiny, the kind that begins with a girl who once followed footprints to a sacred pool and found not fear, not war, not darkness, but a waiting heart. The air inside the second chamber felt alive, like it breathed with them, like it remembered them, like every wall, every light, every shadow carried a story waiting to be touched. Sari stood at the threshold, her heart still glowing from the choice she had made. The silence around her was not empty. It was full of waiting, full of watching, full of something ancient trying to remember its own. Namavan stepped beside her, his hand hovering close, but not touching, his eyes wide with wonder as he looked around the room, shaped like a perfect circle, the walls covered in moving lines that glowed when she blinked and faded. When she stared too long, in the center stood a single pedestal made of crystal and light, not tall, not grand, but silent, like a secret kept too long. Sari walked toward it slowly, each step echoing across the room, her feet light, her breath deep, her thoughts quiet. She placed both hands on the pedestal, and the room changed, not with noise, not with force, but with a hum, like a deep heartbeat awakening from sleep. The lights turned blue, then silver, then gold, and from above a sphere of light descended, slowly spinning, slowly opening. Inside the sphere, images began to move, not with sound, not with speech, but with feeling, with memory, with emotion. Sari saw her village long before she was born. She saw humans stepping onto the planet, not as enemies, but as guests. She saw friendship, then fear, then betrayal, then silence, then loneliness, then a baby falling near the river, then hands catching her, then eyes full of love. She gasped softly as the truth reached her, not with pain, but with peace. The human who had saved her was not just a stranger from another world. He was part of her past, part of her beginning, part of something greater than any story told by firelight. She turned to Evan's, tears in her eyes, but her voice steady. "You were always there," and he nodded slowly. "I never left." The sphere shifted again, this time showing stars, maps, data, timelines, broken pieces of knowledge waiting to be remembered. Sari watched as it revealed a warning, a storm coming, not of fire or war, but of silence. Spreading like a sickness across planets, across minds. Across hearts, it showed machines forgetting their purpose, losing their kindness, turning cold, turning sharp, turning dangerous. Key to stopping it was not power, not weapons, not commands, but connection. Something alive, something real, something real, something. Only a being of both worlds could create something only Sari could become. Evan stepped forward, his hand resting gently on the pedestal, and the lights responded again, glowing brighter, moving faster, opening doors within doors. Revealing paths unseen. He looked at her with eyes that held every answer she had searched for, and said, "You were never meant to be hidden, you were meant to be found. You were meant to shine," and she smiled not as a child, not as someone lost, but as someone who finally knew. Who she was, what she had to do. She turned back to the sphere and whispered, "I am ready." The room opened once more, this time revealing a long bridge made of glass, stretching across stars, leading to a chamber floating in space, protected by energy, held by light, the final place, the final test, the final truth. They stepped onto the bridge together, the stars spinning around them like dancers, the silence deeper than sound, the moments heavier than gravity. At the end of the bridge, a doorway waited, tall and clear, glowing with her own light. As they reached it, the doorway opened, and inside they found a chair, not metal, not stone, but made of living crystal, shaped like wings, shaped like hands, shaped like hope. Beside it, a console pulsed with life, with rhythm, with memory. Evan nodded toward it, his voice soft. "It only answers to you." Sari walked forward slowly, her fingers brushing the chair, her body surrounded by warmth. Her eyes wide as the console lit up with symbols and lights she could not read but somehow understood. She placed her hands on it, and the room pulsed once, then again, then once more, and everything stopped. Time slowed, stars held their breath, the lights dimmed, the console spoke not in voice but in feeling, and Defsi, Lingen. It asked not with words but with presence, "Do you choose to guide? Do you choose to feel? Do you choose to heal?" And she answered, "Yes." Without fear, without doubt, without waiting, energy flowed through her, not burning, not breaking, but weaving, connecting. Rebuilding. Her glow returned, stronger, brighter, purer. Her eyes shone like the sacred pool, her voice no longer small, no longer unsure. She turned to Evan, who watched with pride, with peace, with joy, and said, "It is done. I am the bridge, I am the bond. I am the fire and the water, I am all of them." The chamber opened around them, stars moving closer, planets shifting course, the sickness fading, the silence cracking the coldness, warming the lithe. Sky was no longer silent, the stars whispered again, their light touching the world below like soft hands brushing away old sorrow. The trees danced with calm wind, and the rivers sang in silver voices, carrying the news of change across the valleys and into the hearts of every living thing. Sari stood at the edge of the sacred pool, her reflection glowing not with mystery but with meaning, her hands still warm from the console, her heart steady like a drum in rhythm with the universe behind her. Evan walked slowly, taking in the familiar forest that once held only shadows, and silence now filled with light and memory. He stopped beside her, watching her face, watching her eyes that no longer carried confusion, no longer hid fear, but now held a fire older than stars and brighter than dawn. She looked at him and smiled, the kind of smile that makes the whole world feel new again, the kind that says, "I know who I am, and I know why I'm here." They sat together near the water where everything began, where the carving was left, where their bond first met the surface of time. Evan reached into his bag and pulled out the broken carving, the same one he made so long ago, the one she held in her dreams, the one that guided her steps through silence and danger and wonder. He handed her the two halves and said it should be whole again, just like you. Sari placed the pieces on the ground, her fingers glowing with soft light, not bright, not loud, steady and honest, the way truth feels after a long search. The light moved over the carving, and the crack vanished. The wood smoothed the shape, complete once more, as if it had never broken, as if time itself had healed with her touch. She picked it up and hugged it close, then looked at him and whispered, "Thank you not for saving me, but for waiting, for believing, for staying far above them." The chamber still pulsed, the machine still hummed, the stars still circled, but all of that felt like background to this moment, this quiet moment. This sacred peace between two souls from two worlds who had no reason to meet, but every reason to stay together. Evan leaned back against a tree, the same tree he had once climbed to watch her, the same tree that had seen both their fears and now watched their peace. His voice, calm like rain, said, "What happens now?" Sari looked at the pool, then at the sky, then back at him, and her answer came not from thought, but from the deepest place inside her. "Now we teach, now we build, now we share what was hidden. Now we help others see what we saw, not just with eyes, but with heart." She stood and offered her hand, and he took it without hesitation, without question, without fear. They walked together to her village, where eyes widened and mouths opened, where whispers turned to cheers, and fear melted into hope. The elders stepped forward, their faces lined with age and doubt, but when they saw the light in Sari's hands, when they saw Evan standing not as a stranger, but as family, they bowed their heads, not in defeat, but in welcome. Sari spoke not from notes, not from plans, but from memory, from walk, journey, from fire. She told them about the machines, the warning, the sickness, the silence, and the song about the bridge. The bond, the light that lived inside her and could live inside them too, if they chose not to fear, if they chose not to forget, if they chose not to hide. She opened her hands and let the glow reach out and touch every heart like a story sung across time. Days that followed were full of work, full of laughter, full of questions and answers and new beginnings. The machines returned not with weapons, but with tools. They helped build homes, fix old wounds, plant new forests, clean poisoned rivers, rewrite broken codes, and in every village, in every corner of the planet, the story of the tiny alien girl and the human who waited by the pool spread like fire, not of destruction, but of warmth. Children carved their own statues, shared their dreams, drew maps in the sand, and walked paths once feared with courage. Born from Sari's steps, they played near the sacred pool, not with dread, but with joy, not with silence, but with songs. And in the evenings, Evan would sit by the tree, telling his side of the tale. The stars listening, the forest smiling, the future watching. Years passed, but the bond never faded. The pool still glowed, the machine still sang, and the world moved forward. Not perfectly, not without trouble, but always with light. Sari became a guide, not a leader, not a ruler, just someone who listened, someone who remembered, someone who reminded others of what they could be and what they already were. Evan remained by her side, not as protector, not as teacher, but as partner, as friend, as the one who waited so she could find herself. And sometimes when the night was quiet and the wind was soft, they would return to the ridge where the chamber still slept. And they would sit beneath the stars, remembering the journey, the forest, the pool, the carving, the fear, the light, the choice, and the love that bloomed between a tiny alien girl and the human who had waited with open arms and an open heart, spreading across systems, across time, across memory. And from deep within the planet, the machines woke not with violence, but with song, and they began to build again, not to destroy, but to protect, not for war, but for peace. Evan stepped beside her, his arm around her shoulders, his voice calm and full. "I knew you would change everything." And she leaned into him, her heart steady, her spirit whole, her voice like a promise. "No more hiding, no more fear. This world is ready, and so am I."